All right, so this morning we're going to continue in Jeremiah. That is louder than I expected that. All right, good to know. All right, so last week we went through 16 and 17, and we said that the people were confused as to bringing this judgment, right? That they were doing all these terrible things, and then Jeremiah's preaching, destruction's coming, and they're going, but why? Right? I mean, and Jeremiah's like, what do you mean, why? I've been telling you why. You're not listening. And so God announces his judgment, but he continues to offer hope as well. And the main thing from last week was that sin is part of our nature due to rebellion in the garden, and only Christ can heal our hearts. So this morning we're going to be going through chapters 18 through 20 in Jeremiah. And as we kind of get started in this for this morning, the first thing that I want to have us talk about is how do we confront sin, or how are we supposed to confront sin in the church? What's the procedure that we're supposed to follow, so to say? There's 3 steps. You guys know what those are?
Never sit.
Say what?
Never sit.
Okay. That would definitely be the first thing that you're going to do. And in particular, what we're talking about here is confronting sin, like it says up here, in the church with your brothers and sisters. So if you see a brother or sister in sin, what are you supposed to do?
Correct them.
Okay. How? Are you supposed to initially start off by walking up to the pulpit and make an announcement? Hello, everyone. I'd just like everyone to know that Weston is stealing money from his father. Is that how you're supposed to address that?
No.
Okay. How are you supposed to do it?
Go up to them personally.
Yes. Correct. Privately. Okay. What's the next step?
If they do it, like one of the steps you might go with someone else.
Yes. Witnesses.
Okay, at least you can wait here.
Huh?
At least you can wait here. Just let us know you good.
All right, and then what's the final step?
Take part of the church.
Yes.
Thanks.
All right, so you're supposed to address it privately with witnesses and before the church. Okay, and Jesus outlines this directly in Matthew 18, verses 15 through 20. And so what's the purpose of doing it private? Of doing it in that order? What's the benefit for the church in addressing it in that order?
Well, if they correct privately, then it's less embarrassing to the person.
Okay. Yeah.
Doesn't make it a big of a deal.
Yeah, that too. And so yeah, we start off because I mean, like you guys just said, we want to make sure that if it's something that they correct on their own right then and there, then you've avoided a lot of embarrassment. You don't want to make a huge stink out of it, and so that's a good way. Those are good reasons. What about if they don't and you have to approach it with witnesses? Why do we approach it with witnesses next?
So maybe they know that we're not the only ones seeing it.
Okay. What else?
More the merrier.
Okay.
They may take it from somewhere else other than you. I could tell Reagan to stop it, but she would never. But you could tell her to stop, and she would.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I think what Kobe might be trying to say with the more the merrier is that this idea of when you go with more people, it's either going to kind of related to what Maddie was saying to begin with, that the idea of more people approaching them about this kind of might make them more convicted of it, but also a matter of more people kind of starts to show that this is a problem that really needs to be addressed. That this is something that definitely is an issue. You're obviously not responding to it from one correction, and so this needs to happen. Okay. What about before the entire church? Why bring it in front of the entire church? How often do you see somebody bring something up to the entire church and say, this person is not living right, and we need to address this as a church? You don't see it very often in today's culture. But what's the purpose of it? I mean, Jesus is the one telling us to do it. So it's not like this is something of, well, you know, we don't really have to do that. No, Jesus is the one saying that this has to be done. So what's the purpose? If they haven't listened to it privately, if they haven't listened to it with witnesses, why bring it in front of the church?
The church can lift them up.
Okay, the church can lift them up. That's good.
Show them that everyone in the church cares
Yes.
about him.
Yeah. What else? I think those are two really good reasons right there. I mean, that to show the person that the church knows and the church cares. Okay? And this is a theme that we've seen consistently running through Jeremiah, isn't it? That God cares, and he cares through showing discipline. Okay? And so the idea is to bring it up with more people to say, we know about this. This is wrong. You need to change. Okay? And notice, if you go into that passage, what you'll notice is that Jesus actually says, bring it before the church first. And then there's one final step, which is if that person still doesn't respond to the entire church saying, you can't do this, you cannot live like this, you need to change, that's when Jesus says, okay, now you need to leave. Okay? And Jesus himself is the one saying this. Okay? This isn't just Ted thinks this is a good idea. This is Jesus, our Lord and Savior, our master and teacher, telling us these are the steps you have to take. Okay? And so it's expected that with each one of these steps, it's a stopgap to try and make sure that if we see somebody doing something that they shouldn't be doing, that this is an opportunity for them to turn around and say, okay, nope, this has gone far enough. I do not need to be doing this anymore. And the hope is that by the time that it would never get to the church, but that if it does, that they would recognize, oh my goodness, this can't go on. Paul has to confront the church in Corinth about this in 1 Corinthians 5, and then he comes back to address it in 2 Corinthians 2, because in 1 Corinthians 5, in that case, what you'll see is like there's a guy in the church that's actually sleeping with his mother, or his mother-in-law or something. It's really disgusting. It's a case of incest, and Paul says, look, you guys are just acting like nothing's going on, okay? And this is something that even the people outside of your fellowship, the people that are just pagans in the world, would sit there and go, that's weird. Okay? And they were treating it like nothing was happening. And Paul specifically says, while he is with you in the fellowship, dismiss him. Cut him off and tell him no more. That he can't continue. Paul tells the church this. And in 2 Corinthians 2, he's heard back from the church by this point. He's writing another letter back to the church. And he's telling them, okay, so I heard that you guys did it. You guys followed through with my command. That's awesome. Thank you for doing that. You did the right thing. But here's the thing. I've heard about this guy and that he's really convicted about this now. And this is part of what the step is that by cutting him off from the community, the guy realized just how bad things had gotten. And he actually was remorseful. He stopped all the sin that he was committing, and he was wanting to come back into the church. But because the last thing the church had heard from Paul was cut him off, they were like, nope. And so Paul is trying to say, no. Okay, he's stopped. He's coming, he wants to come back and be part of the group, and he's going to serve Christ the way he should. Let him back into the family. Okay? And this is the whole thing that Paul is trying to get at during these 2 chapters. Okay? So why do we address sin this way? We've kind of talked about why do we address sin as far as like why do we, what's the process and what's the reasoning behind each step, but why do we do it in general? Why do it at all?
So like if someone sees, if I go here, but I did something wrong, I think, well, she goes to church, why did she do that?
Bingo. To prevent the appearance that the church body approves. Okay? That's the biggest key factor in this. If the church goes around and sees, or if let's see here, somebody that I don't usually pick on, Riley. Okay, and everybody in the community knows that Riley is this malicious gossip that slanders people left and right behind their backs, and just know that she's this terrible, mean person, which she's not. But if that was the reputation that she had, and then she showed up to church,
How's it going?
but she also sat there and said, "Yes, I go to Third and Kilgore Church of Christ." Then it's going to be this issue that everybody's going to see her, and they're going to go, "Yeah, great."
Hi, how are you?
Okay.
I don't go there.
Do you think that this is kind of an issue that we're seeing in our culture today as far as the churches go? What kind of witness do you usually see about Christians in mainstream media? Are we kind?
No.
If Jesus says they will know that you are my disciples by your love. Do we always see love? This is why these steps are important. Because the world sees it. And when they sit there and see us acting ridiculous and malicious and angry and everything else, and we don't put a stop to it, we approve of it. When the world sees us fighting with each other and just going off and doing all this ridiculous nonsense that they see us participate in, if we don't stop it, we approve of it. Okay? We have to trust that the church leadership is going to do what's necessary to make things right. But we also have to understand that when we see things not going the way that they should, we need to address it. It's imperative that we address it. The church will die otherwise. So what's the goal of addressing sin? For the person now. We've talked about why each of these steps is important. We've talked about why it's important to do it in general. Why is it important for that person? If I know that Reagan is cheating on tests or I don't know, beating up other people and being violent, okay? She's intentionally spiking the ball into her teammate's face, okay, in volleyball practice. If I know that she's just a malicious, mean person, what's the goal of me addressing that with her?
But it'll change.
Exactly. The whole goal of addressing sin is to get the person to turn from sinful nature and to seek God. Okay? That's the whole point of this. That's the whole reason that we go through this. It's not just because I sit there and see, Reagan being mean to people. I'm like, oh, I don't like that. Reagan, you need to change. You're just mean. All right? No, that's not the point. If all we're going to do is sit there and call somebody out and say, you're mean, well, that doesn't do anything. In fact, it might just make her even more bitter, and now she's mad at me, and so then it just becomes this vicious cycle. That's the way the world works. All right? many of you guys have watched these kind of interactions online? Ever go through the comment section on a news article or something else that you follow online? Don't. If you haven't already, don't. The trolls are out there. It is ridiculous how mean those people can be.
Sad that they have nothing better to do than
Yeah.
sit there and comment worthless things that nobody care about on something that could potentially hurt somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, it's,
Say, hey, this is stupid, or hey, that looks like you're ugly and stuff. They're just hurting another person in one way or another. And they don't care.
yeah, it's crazy. And so the purpose of addressing this is not just to sit there and call people out and say, well, you're mean, you're a gossip, you're cheating, or you're stealing money, or whatever else. Okay? The purpose is to sit there and say, Reagan, we love you, and we want what's best for you. And treating people like this is not going to be something that is going to work out best for you. It's not something that honors God. It's not something that reflects His nature. This can't continue. Okay? That's why we do this. So, let's go ahead and start reading through Jeremiah 18. Let's see here. We'll start on this side. So Jeremiah 18. How many do we have here this morning? 3, 5, 6, 10, 12. Okay. Let's just do one verse each, and then I'll finish it off. Got a lot of people. Okay, one verse each. Chapter 18, starting with Reagan. Work our way around.
This is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord. Go down to the potter's house and
So I went down to the potter's house and I saw him working at the wheel.
Oh, sorry.
First one.
But the pot he was shaping from clay was being hard with his hand, so the potter formed it into another pot, shaping it as smooth as clay.
And the word of the Lord came to me.
He said, Can I not do with you, Israel, as the potter does, declares the Lord? Like clay in the hand of the potter, so are you in my hand, Israel.
If at any time I announce that a nation or kingdom is to be uprooted, torn down, and destroyed,
and if the nation treated with which I have spoken turns from the evil, I will relent of the
Disaster?
that I intended it to do to it.
if at another time I announce that a nation or kingdom is to be built up and planted.
And if it does evil in my sight, not listening to my voice, then I will relent of the good that I had intended to do to it.
Now therefore say to the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, Thus says the Lord, Behold, I am shaking disaster against you, and devilishing a plan against you. Turn every one from his evil way, and amend your ways and your deeds.
But they will reply, It's no use. We will continue with our own plans. We will all follow the stubbornness of our evil hearts.
Therefore, thus says the Lord, ask among the nations who has heard of like of this. The virgin Israel has done a very horrible thing. Does the snow of Lebanon ever vanish from its rocky slopes? Do its cool waters from distant sources ever cease to flow?
Yet my people have forgotten me. They burn incense and worthless idols which pagans stumble in their ways. And in the instant past they made them walk in my path and on roads not built up.
The land will be an object of horror and of lasting scorn. All who pass by will be appalled and will shake their heads.
Like a wind from the east, I will scatter them before their enemies.
I will show them my back and not my face in the day of the new task.
They said, "Come, let's make plans against Jeremiah. For the teaching of the law by the priest will not cease, nor will counsel from the wise, nor the word from the prophets. So come, let's attack him with our tongues, and pay no attention to anything he says. Listen to me, Lord. Hear what my accusers are saying. Should good be repaid with evil? Yet they have dug a pit for me. Remember that I stood before you and spoke in their behalf to turn your wrath away from them. So give their children over to famine, hand them over to the power of the sword. Let their wives be made childless and widows. Let their men be put to death. Let their young men slain by the sword in battle. Let a cry be heard from their houses when you suddenly bring invaders against them, for they have dug a pit to capture me, and have hidden snares for my feet. But you, Lord, know all their plots to kill me. Do not forgive their crimes or blot out their sins from your sight. Let them be overthrown before you. Deal with them in the time of your anger." All right. Anything that you guys saw that caught your eye? All right. Well, this morning what we're going to focus on is this last section right here, and it's Jeremiah's cry out to God. And so there's a part in this text that most people would probably focus in on. What do you think that is?
The plots to kill, or the wrath of Jeremiah and the people.
Yeah, so this part right here. So give their children over to famine, hand them over to the power of the sword. I mean, does this sound very nice?
No.
No. I mean, it sounds pretty brutal. I mean, Jeremiah is wishing a lot of harm on these people. Okay? I mean, let their wives be made childless and widows. Let their men be put to death. Jeremiah is mad. Is this what we're usually called to say?
No,
No, what are we called to say?
forgive them.
Yeah, forgive them. Right? We're still supposed to pray for them in all of this, right? Okay. The thing that when people read through this that get disturbed, that oftentimes they forget, is the part right before it. Remember that I stood before you and spoke in their behalf to turn your wrath from them. It's really easy to skip over that part and just focus on this. But we have to remember that, yeah, Jeremiah prayed about the people in Judah and Jerusalem on a constant basis to begin with. And they did nothing but throw him in a pit. They put him in stocks, so they had his hands, bound and hanging like this while he was stuck in a house. When they threw him in a well, his feet, the mud was so thick and such that his feet sank down to up to his knees in the mud. And when they finally had to drag him out, it was because a foreigner noticed that this was wrong and threw down a rope for him to wrap around his body so that he could be pulled out of there. And even then, when the king was the one that said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead and pull him out," and talked to him afterwards and said, "No, this isn't right. What's happened to you? We need to do something different," he still put him back in prison. Okay, Jeremiah was consistently addressing the people, and he still loved them enough to continue to go to them during all this and say, "Stop what you're doing. You're offering all this sacrifice to all these foreign false gods. You're killing each other. You're treating each other horribly. Stop, and God will bring back peace. Stop, and God won't bring the disaster that's coming, because he still loved them." And so the main thing that I want you to take away from this morning is that sometimes showing God's love means showing his discipline. And sometimes that might result in a backlash. If I know Reagan's being really mean to people and I address her on it, she may not be very happy with me. In fact, may get really mad at me. I'm still supposed to address it. That fear of addressing it and being retaliated against prevents a lot of people from actually going out there and addressing sin. Don't let that stop you. All right? David approached Goliath, who was like 3 or 4 feet taller than him. He had, the stones in his sling. Yeah, sure. But what did David know was more important? He had God behind it. You guys can know that if you're going to address somebody in their sin, God is with you. Okay, and obviously we need to do it in love, and obviously we need to make sure that we're approaching it from the standpoint as well of, well, I know I'm not perfect, but still this needs to be addressed. Because oftentimes that's another thing that comes up, is people will sit there and say, well, you're one to judge, you've got this in your life. If you're trying to work on that, that's no excuse. Okay? If you're actively, if Weston knows that he has trouble taking some money or whatever, and he's working on that, and he's like, you know what, I can't keep doing this, But he also sees that Reagan is over here being mean to people. That can't stop him from addressing sin. And for crying out loud, we're all human. That's the point. We all have sin. We all have sinful nature in us. We still have to be part of God's kingdom in addressing it and making sure that it doesn't continue in God's kingdom. And so even though it might result in backlash, we have to continue to speak His message. That's a challenge I want to make sure you guys take with you. Okay. Tonight, since we had the Carlsbad Youth Rally, we're not going to have any event tonight. There will be a church meal after evening worship tonight, so come ready for that. There's going to be a student-parent meeting real quick this morning after worship, so just come back over here. It shouldn't take but 20 minutes tops, I would think. So next week we're going to do boom ball and s'mores here at the building after evening worship. So look forward to seeing you guys then. Love you guys. Think you're awesome. How did all the games go this weekend? I know Maddie and Reagan, Riley told me about you guys. Yeah, you just stopped them. Good grief.
We beat them the first match 25-10, and they came back and beat us 25. I think it was like 25-21.
Okay. You guys got.
And they beat us. They beat us. 17.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they beat us. We beat them.
Oh, you beat them.
Yeah, we beat them.
Oh, okay.
So it was back in the second match.
Good.
I'm not gonna lie, we smashed that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
75-10. We had one girl. We got the first point. You could have a side out. We had 1 point, and I served 7 serves, and then we side out. We had to get the side out, and then one of our girls served 4. And then we had another one had to serve.
That thing is, they played this team and they beat them 25-1.